Towercast podcast. We're live from San Antonio. San Antonio Film Festival. Very exciting time, not just for indie filmmakers, but Hollywood legends, which we're going to be talking to right now in the film industry. Before I introduce our amazing guests, we have my fellow co-host. We have Mr. John Castro giving us that actor perspective.
How you guys doing?
Mr. Michael Delao.
Hello again.
Giving us that cinematography perspective.
Hopefully.
I'm your fellow host, Carlos de la Torre, making sure we get a little bit of writing and directing perspective in there. Your humble servant as a filmmaker. We have Austin Young and Eric Sanchez. We have to give them credit where credit is due. They're running everything in the background, and it's looking and sounding fantastic for us.
Thank you, guys.
We want to thank everybody at the San Antonio Film Festival for having the Towercast podcast. They've been extremely generous to us and making sure we have this beautiful setup for our podcast.
This is the comfiest couches we've had for our show.
I'll say that. So we have two very amazing guests today. They just did a fantastic panel Q&A on editing, on film editing, and they've edited or have had a hand in editing some of the best pictures, some of our favorites. We have Goursaud and Lynzee Klingman joining us today. Thank you all for joining us on the Towercast podcast. We
Nice for having you.
we appreciate you all being here. And Lynzee, if you can grab that mic there, that might just so that get a little closer to you. But thank you all for joining us. We've had the pleasure of watching some of your work that has been fantastic, and we just want to run through some of those things. But before we do, I'd love to ask you all to briefly walk us through how you became storytellers to begin with.
Please.
Whoever would like to start first, just tell us how did you become a storyteller? Was there something before cinema that captured you, or did you just come into cinema right away? How was your storytelling journey begin?
How did the fire start?
Well, movies was what I loved always. My whole family. I mean, we loved the movies. We went to the movies. And when I was a kid, all the great movies, all the studio great movies were on television, uninterrupted.
Oh.
Because, it was amazing. So I saw every major movie in my childhood. And I continued going to the movies, talking about them. That was the story there. So one day I graduated college with a degree in history. Then what?
Hey, we're
Get a job.
of kindred spirits, because I graduated with a history degree as well. Double majored with film, but I did history as well.
Well, history is storytelling.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to work on documentaries,
Right.
And there were no film schools. There were 3, and they were very. There's one in UCLA, NYU, and maybe there was
USC.
something at USC.
USC.
That was it.
Right.
And I think they were all graduate school. It never came up, and I wasn't going to grad. I was done with school.
Yeah, it wasn't even a
So I looked I decided I'm going to become a film editor because I met a guy who was a film editor. What's that? I said. Well, we make the movie. He was working for the city of New York, doing films about codes for where to put the radiator in terms of like that.
Sure.
Boring, but it was a job. And I thought, oh, all right, I'll become a film editor. It sounds cool to me.
Really?
Now, this was a long time ago, and I assumed, like every woman did then, that some white knight was going to sweep me up and pay my bills. And I don't know. I knew I didn't want to be a housewife, but I didn't think about it. I knew I didn't want to get married because my parents get it. But anyway, I didn't think that far ahead.
Right.
So I started trying to get a job by just going through the yellow pages, listings, going to buildings, sending, calling, like that. And ultimately, a guy needed someone to answer the phone and cut negative.
Okay.
I didn't know how to cut negative. I'd never touched film. Day 1, I was cutting someone's negative.
Really? On the first day they threw you on the pool?
16 millimeter A and B rolls. Reversal film. I had and the guy said, don't put your fingers on it, don't get any cigarette ashes on this. That's the original.
Were you overwhelmed or were you ready for the?
I was dumb enough not to be overwhelmed, but I knew I didn't know what I was doing, and he didn't have time to show me.
Okay.
I was paralyzed for a while,
how you learn.
It's bliss. It's bliss, right? That's the saying. Being oblivious is bliss, right? Just
Exactly.
Well, that was.
ignorance is bliss to a certain degree.
The good news was it was a film that had multiple cuts. It was a guy who did a lot of animation, and he would do things like to be or not be, that's the question, and he'd have a to and a be. And so he loved his work so much he didn't notice all the terribleness.
Absolutely. And how about yourself? How did the fire start for you as Costa asks?
Well, it's, I come from what we call medium-sized town city in France, but in America it might be a small city, I don't know. And so film was not in my, didn't know anybody connected to that, absolutely no connection.
Were you a fan of cinema at least? Because
my
French cinema
family, like all working class family, we went to the movies every Sunday.
Okay.
Every Sunday as a family, we went to the 5 o'clock.
And what are the types of films you would see?
Everything. We saw a lot of dub movie, American movies dubbed,
Sure.
and French movies.
French
So
movies.
yeah. So every week we would all go as a family watch a movie. But for me, I think searching to be an artist, I didn't know. I wanted to be a journalist first, see the world, which I did.
Of course.
But I think it's reading. I was a very, very voracious reader.
Reader.
And reading his story, and so I was just into reading novels like the Russian, the French, not so much the English. The French and the English at that time, it was our cultures were kind of separated. But so I read, and then the first thing I did was study art history.
Art.
I was there, I didn't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do since the journalism thing, for reasons not too long to explain here, did not happen. So I studied art history.
You wanted to express yourself in a different way?
So I was searching. So at least
Right.
when you study art history, you're looking at art. And in a way, there was great training for editing and for filmmaking, because you're looking at images all day long. And you really have to look at the detail, because you study on a different period. You have to be able to maybe not name the painter, but be able to say which period it is.
Of course.
So you have to learn all that. So the eye becomes composition, lighting. You learn a lot.
Right.
So I went to New York because I met Americans, and they said you can't leave if you don't know New York. And so I found a subject for my thesis for the Sorbonne in Paris that had to do with art history. And I started to do research in New York, and then I immediately realized that this is not what I want to do with my life. Not.
You
And
knew it.
so what am I going to do? And the thought that came to me was I would prefer to knit a sweater, because my mother was a knitter, and put my name on it. This is the thought at the moment. Then do this. And it's amazing. Do you know the movie The Elephant Man?
Sure, absolutely.
And you know the scene when he built that church, he
Yeah.
makes something. I just burst into the most incredible tears of my life.
That
Because
guy.
It's connected with my story.
Right.
You know what I mean? This idea of making your own stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So the rest is just pure luck. I met these guys who were going to Columbia Film School.
Okay.
Because when you're young and pretty, everything happens to you. And I met them in a gallery, because my friend I was in the art world,
Right.
And they said, oh, you should come and sit on the classes at Columbia when you know the universities. Well, I'm not, enrolled. I said, don't worry, this is America.
Beautiful.
And I did.
And-
And the minute I put my butt on one of the classes, I was like, that's it.
It's interesting how us as Americans we love foreign cinema to a T, especially if you're a filmmaker. We study the Goddards, and I personally love Jacques Demy and the Young Girls of Rochefort and the Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and these we love European cinema, and then Europeans love American cinema. So when you connect with these people, it's like, oh, okay, there's lots to talk about and lots to discuss amongst each other. And what's interesting about your story so far that we know is that you came from one artistic, the heart of that place, of Paris, for instance, in France, and then New York and Los Angeles are very much the artistic kind of central places here in America. Lately, it's changed in the past 2 decades or so, but definitely in those eras, we had those were the places to go, and those were the places to meet. I mean, it fascinates me that you went to New York because you may have crossed paths unknowingly with Martin Scorsese, who was
Oh yeah, absolutely.
at
I mean,
NYU.
it was the most incredible place, New York in the 70s.
Yeah,
It
Right.
was. It really was. So absolutely it was a right. And you know, first I did a trip as a tourist,
Sure.
and I took the boat around like every tourist. And I was like, this is fabulous. I'm coming here.
This is me.
I'm coming here. You know?
Absolutely.
And so I did. And this, you know, and the rest is what happened.
Right. The rest is history, as they say. Right. We want to tackle some of our favorite works of yours that you've tackled. I'll start with Lynzee. You got to work on One Flew Over Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson, of course, and Milos Forman. And this picture is seminal for a lot of people,
including me.
including you. Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, I want to mention that I was a documentary person before that.
Before that.
And I had done 2 films that were nominated for Best Documentary,
Wow.
and one won the Academy Award.
So already an Oscar nominee or
Yeah.
picture. Wow.
In documentaries.
In documentary.
And I just felt at that time, given how few documentaries were made at that time,
Right.
and I thought it was very violating to show people's pain. It was so sad, and people didn't know how
How to
people
photograph
would
the-
react to what they said and did. Never picturing that reality TV, everybody wanted to be on it and emote, but I thought it would be good to work on films where people got paid to do that.
Sure.
However, people thought if you make documentaries, you don't understand story.
Yeah.
You
Because
don't
most
have
people-
any knowledge of
most
character
people-
development.
Sure.
You know, so wrong, so wrong. But-
Right. Absolutely.
So I tried for a year, and then I got a call to work on Cuckoo's Nest. And it was seminal, it was beyond, I was a great fan of Milos' films. All his films from
You
Czechoslovakia.
know those films?
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
Loves
Milos-
of the Blonde,
Yeah.
Black
Fireman's
Peter,
Ball.
Fireman's Ball, oh yeah.
Oh my God.
And I had seen all of them, and I was a huge fan of his.
Did you want, because you were a documentarian? I mean, in those times, correct me if I'm wrong here. Most people didn't kind of surpass the fact that cinema history began with films like Nanook of the North and all these, documentaries. But eventually, documentary became part of journalism more than it did part of cinema. People didn't realize that it still stood as cinema. Were you interested in going into narrative at that point? Or
Oh yeah, when I graduated, I wanted to work on movies telling history
Sure.
stories. But
Right.
it wasn't really a choice. I wanted a job.
Of course. So you get a call for Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh my God, pitched me every day. I thought, how lucky am I got the job. And Milos was not the least bit disconcerted about the documentary.
Sure.
And I had known the first editor, Richard Chu.
Multiple editors on this picture as well, so you got to collaborate with very many.
No, you collaborate with Milos.
With Milos. Oh, directly. That's
That's
now you have a team of editors and editing assistants that don't almost never deal with the director, but in this case, everybody connected with Milos.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right. He would go from editor to editor.
Wow.
Mainly hanging with Richard.
Sure.
Um,
Maybe he was seeking that style then for this picture. Maybe.
no, when I first came on, I did all the Dr. Spivey and those doctors, the interviews with Jack,
Okay.
which were endless footage and very formless. And
Of course.
so I thought, oh, that's why I got hired. But
Wow.
yeah, and here's a technical note. I started cutting it, pulling what I found interesting and making a thing. And Milos came into the room. He said, "What are you doing, Lynzee?" And I said, "Well, I'm getting all the good stuff, and then I'll figure out how to join it up." He said, "No. You start at the start at the beginning.
He was very linear. He had
Very.
chronological.
Very.
Wow.
And even though there was no beginning, I started with the beginning, and I always did that the rest of my I
Wow.
mean, he was
You
really a
maintained that.
great
Exactly.
teacher. Oh,
Absolutely.
my. So that was good.
Wow. Now, and you worked on one of my favorite pictures of all time, which was Francis Ford Coppola's The Outsiders. I just think it's a terrific picture. It's one of my favorites. It's
Mine too.
from the novel to the picture, but I think Francis captured something very special in the picture with an amazing cast.
All-star
And
cast.
you were the main editor. You were the only
I
editor.
was
of
the
this.
only editor.
So how was cutting The Outsiders? Because that to me is
Well,
very special.
actually, it was a difficult experience because Francis was doing two films at the same time. He was in Tulsa doing the next movie. What do you call it?
Was it The Conversation or
No.
This
That
was
was
after.
Like,
No, the film with Mickey Rourke.
Mickey Rourke.
Rumblefish.
Rumblefish.
Yeah.
Dylan.
Mickey Rourke.
Okay.
So it was, I was in Los Angeles editing, and I would periodically take my reels because it was on film,
Of course.
and fly to Tulsa.
And this was 35mm prints, or this was
35 minutes.
35mm.
And and I would get to Tulsa, and it was a wreck because the other person who had worked on the script wanted to share the credit, and he didn't want to share the credit. So I would come in the middle of whatever was happening, with the other movie or this movie about the credit. So it was difficult in that sense. I barely saw it.
And Francis is very dynamic, I
Yeah.
imagine, right?
Francis is completely different from what I understand Milos.
Sure.
Francis does not stay in the Caribbean, at least not with me.
Oh.
He comes, he looks, he says, make it more beautiful, and he leaves. And you have to keep digging and keep working. So yeah, it's very, very different. So
But
we
this
won't
is coming
stay-
off the tail of The Godfather. So how did you feel about working with somebody like Francis at that point? This was the height of his career. Right?
It's so funny, but I think that we are families, and so when you connect with somebody, there's a sense of family, and it's hard to explain. It's
Right.
not spoken. It's a smell.
Yeah, there's that shorthand that
It's a smell. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it's funny because I'm a quarter Italian.
Okay.
But he didn't know that. And then eventually, when I was working on The Outsiders and we did the sound in Napa, I invited my parents, and he cooked pasta for my parents. And he said, "Oh, your father reminded me of my uncle Anthony." And you see those little things you can't quite explain. And so I'm sure if you think about Milos, there is stuff like that. And so immediately, and also because when I met him, I was not that long out of film school.
Okay.
So I could bullshit my way out of everything you
Of
talk
course.
about, because when you're in film school, you learn how to talk about movies.
You're preaching to the choir. That's how we get our, our
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah,
Of course.
and so I was able to go on, because when he interviewed me, I didn't know why I was there. They didn't tell me what movie. That was the previous movie, One for the Heart. I was there not knowing. I didn't even know that day that I was going to meet him, so it was another story. So when I met him, and my first introduction with him was talking about movies.
Sure.
And we were talking about Henri Bazin, what is cinema, and so I could bullshit with the best of them
Absolutely.
because it was
So
so
jealous.
fresh in my mind.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
So that's what I tell young people. If you want to have a career, you have to know movies.
Oh, yes.
Because you will not stay in a room with a great director if you cannot understand the references.
Be a student
If you
of
don't,
cinema
if you
first.
don't have the culture,
Sure.
they'll look at you and go like, if your favorite film is Casablanca, I'm sorry. It's a great film, but that's not.
Sorry, Austin.
You have to have different. You have to know
Yeah,
world
you have to know the
cinema.
range.
Beyond the yeah.
Yeah.
Having to know where things came from.
That's-
Like Lynzee knew all of his movies,
Right,
right? She could talk about Bloods of a Blanche Charlemagne because she'd seen all of them.
I myself am a lover of classic cinema, particularly right now. I'm on a binge of things like Fellini, Roberto Mussolini.
Hey,
all
lucky
that.
you.
This is-
Lucky
yeah,
you.
I'm a very big fan of neorealism and Italian cinema.
I
and
love Neo-Realism.
It's just beautiful
I
to,
think it's
to
my favorite.
So in this case, though, of The Outsiders, you had to be true.
Well,
Most people don't
one
know.
thing I would say about the artist that Francis had a very clear concept on that picture.
Yeah, and there's two main cuts. The
Yeah,
full
right.
novel.
I don't know about the other stuff.
Okay.
He likes to go back. He owns the movies. He goes back.
Right. Yeah.
I have not even looked at it.
Okay.
But he had a very clear concept, which is he wanted to make this boy mythical.
Sure.
He wanted to make
Homely.
them big. That's why he had a symphonic score.
Right.
Which I thought, oh my God, the score of the other movie is so great with a guy from the police doing the music. That's so much more fun. I'm talking about Rumblefish.
Right.
I love the score of
Sure.
Rumblefish.
Yeah.
But we had the big. He wanted them to make them mythical creatures, and I guess it worked because you still remember the movie.
Absolutely.
And you still
And
love
Pony
it.
Boy, I mean,
Yeah.
Pony Boy Curtis as a character goes through a lot of it. We go through these same emotions with him, and being torn right in the middle as being an intellectual and wanting to hang with the family he grew up with, and we're torn apart,
No kidding,
with his
understand.
character. So absolutely very dynamic, and it seems like you got on well with Francis because you worked on another picture together.
I did 3 films. Yeah.
3 films with
Yeah.
Francis.
No, as I said, we had. Francis is not. He has a great sense of humor, and he never gets mad. I think with me, so he's very even.
Sure.
But he does not get very personal. You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he doesn't open up and suddenly, but there is that, and it's a funny thing because, for example, I never connected with Spielberg, and I would think about that.
Well,
I would think, why am I, because of, Nicholson.
Well, you got to.
Francis.
This is the what they call the film school brats, and which is my favorite era of Hollywood. Is the Coppola's, the Scorsese's, the Spielbergs,
Yeah.
the Palmas. They all hung out. They all were
Yeah.
very close friends.
But they are very different characters.
Absolutely.
And so I always thought, like, why don't I've ever bumped into
Connect with
Spielberg? And because what he was doing and didn't connect with.
Sure.
Then
The material.
when we moved forward in his career, I was working on a film with this cinematographer. I can't think of the film now, the name. It's a horror film. And he came into the cutting room, and suddenly there was a completely different thing because it was a different time in his life.
Sure.
He had done more mature films, and suddenly I felt, oh, okay, I can connect with this guy, and we did. So this is a very, you can't quite define it.
Absolutely.
It's just like love and
Absolutely.
friendship.
And we do say all the time, and I'm sure you all agree that the fact that many people say that editing, Austin, he's my
That's our
editor.
editor.
He's our main editor and my
Yes.
editor for my films, and you have to establish a connection, and you have to understand that editing is the final rewrite of sorts of the
Absolutely.
film. So you all are the authors of this
We
picture
are.
to a certain degree.
We
I
are.
think that's such a
Oh,
insult to writers.
It's really your mic.
your microphone.
You want to hear that
I'm
beautiful voice?
objecting to the final.
To that comment. Okay. Okay. What's your insight on that?
We make the movie in the cutting room,
Sure.
I would say would be a better.
Absolutely.
We pull it all
You make
together.
Exactly.
It really feels kind of like, the best analogy is like Frankenstein. It feels like you have all these raw materials together.
Yeah.
And then
You bring it all
You were
together.
even talking in the panel about how, I guess, after the edit, you're putting the soul into the film. You're putting that emotion, that tension, where then it's not just a bunch of random clips of, people sitting and having these monologues. It's a story.
It's
a
everything. It's
So, yeah.
pacing. It's timing. It's.
Right. And writers are so undervalued in
No,
Hollywood.
I agree.
It
And
bothers
so are
me.
editors. We have the same fate.
Yeah.
Editors and writers
Well, I
are
think
not.
we should
But
get
that's why I
writers that
wanted
do
to ask, kind of like jump around a little bit on this one, but I'm the actor's perspective, so everything you guys are saying is music to my ears. I just love learning. But you edited one of my favorite films, Men on the Moon,
Oh,
with Jim Carrey.
That's his idol. of
It's a
sorts.
very
It's
controversial
Jim Carrey.
film with an actor who's kind of a wild card on the scene. So how difficult or how was it trying to edit his scenes, where it's just different? Was it hard? Like,
well, Jim Carrey is very professional. He hit his marks.
he hit his mark, but remember that?
Yeah, but when he became the Tony Clifton
Exactly.
character, he got nuts.
He got nice.
He got nuts.
Nuts.
Exactly, that's what.
There's a film called Jim and Andy,
Yeah, Jim and
Yeah,
Andy,
he's,
where he talks about the
and you
experience.
see it, and he was out of control.
Wild
as
card.
time went on
Yeah, he
as
was.
Tony.
So was that hard in the editing room? Kind
It
of
was
like.
hard on everybody, and especially Miller. mean, he
characters.
couldn't control.
Jim.
No, Tony.
The character.
Tony, yeah. Right.
Well, because he
It was
was
so weird,
That's
because
what
he
I'm
was
saying.
in character. He's very method that way.
and he couldn't get out.
Oh, I see.
Jim could not get out.
Does that differ for somebody like you worked on True Confessions, so you worked with two of the greats, Robert De Niro and
yeah.
Robert Duvall. What about their dynamics in the cutting room? Is that something that affected you in any way, or because Robert's not very method, both of them aren't, but not as method as Jim, anyways. So
Exactly.
Well, they're very internal, both of them.
Mm.
When I started to film, I thought it was opposite casting. I thought De Niro was the detective.
should have been.
It should have been.
It should have.
And, it was upward from there.
Sure, of course.
A lot of, we had about 7 hours every night of daily because the director really believed in improvisation.
Oh, okay.
And they were,
Who was the director?
just flew right out of my
Yeah.
nose. Ulu Grossbar.
For True Confessions.
And it was really crazy.
It's because it's like you say, we're trying to, I'm a director, so I know directors, but we made it a very key thing to focus on the editors and give you all the
Exactly.
spotlight you deserve. So now my head's with editors right now. So forgive me if we don't know
But
the name of it.
we deserve all the fun.
You absolutely do.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Confident.
Yes. You have an editor here cheering you
Right.
on because he agrees.
You
I was
deserve
gonna
it.
say, is it complicated that you jump from all these different films in different genres, different actors, different styles of filmmaking, and it seems like at the end of the day you're really able to get to the core feelings and emotions that you want to have in each scene. Is it a complicated process to kind of figure out what the film wants to be in the end? Is there a lot of research that you have to do beforehand and all that, or?
You deal with what you got.
And the director has to direct. Even in
Yeah.
post, we have to
with what you got.
offer
Deal with
that.
what you got.
I like it.
So
Well, no, she's simplifying it.
I know.
No, I mean,
She's very
you
quick.
have
Now all
to
the
be
kids are gonna go
conscious
and
about
do-
the kind of story you're about to tell.
Sure.
You know?
Oh, of
Mm.
course.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
You
But
can
for
answer
years-
the question. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you have to know, what kind of movie, and often the director will give you some references of movies.
Absolutely.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
very curious on this shorthand because you've all worked with multiple references and Milos multiple times across multiple films, but it fascinates me when a director like Scorsese has Thelma for his whole career, and they have that shorthand. Did you ever feel like there was somebody where you could have worked 10 more pictures for?
Oh, yeah.
Was that Milos for you?
Oh, yeah.
That was Milos for you, or was that Francis for you?
No,
I
I mean,
had kids, so I couldn't.
Right, but did you?
I could work for Francis any time of the day.
Sure.
Yes, the relationship, but I never wanted to work for one.
Okay, you wanted
Because
to
I
work
always
with
wanted
different-
to direct,
Oh.
and I always was curious about what was going on over there. So
Wow.
this idea of because also I think I was a little hung up. I mean, I had a lot of problem being an editor in terms of being a woman, and actually Marsha would like, she said, "You're a professional and you're getting paid." I go, "Yeah, but this role of editor, like the supporting role of the woman, isn't
Sure.
that like, I would have issues with that. I mean, I was young and I was like, still
That's fair.
figuring
You
it
really
out.
had to cement your
But
ground.
it was really something that bothered me.
Of course,
you
yeah.
know. So
Understand.
I didn't want to be in this position because when I went to film school, I met the guy who was going to be my husband.
Oh, okay.
We're divorced. But when we finished film school, the chairman, whatever you call the head of the film school, I forgot.
The dean or
The dean.
Sure.
So, we went to say goodbye to him, right? And he said, my husband had been admitted as an American Film Institute. He said, "Oh, well, it was about it, it's going to be fantastic, it's going to be fantastic." And he barely looks at me and he goes, "You're going to be fine for this car." Okay? This is what you deal with as a woman, or you
Right.
tell me.
Yeah. As opposed
It's a little
to.
bit better now. He said, "You're going to be fine because I was with my husband." So
Oh, but your
you're
value.
going to be fine, you're
your
with
value
Carl.
in
That
your
was the
work.
name of my husband. So, what I have to worry about, I'm just going with the guys, don't worry.
In the
Now,
current state.
to close the story, he
Sure.
never really had a career and I did. But you see what I mean? So
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
issues.
Oh, of course. So,
Yeah.
in the current state of cinema, which is being more progressive in that regard, having a lot of women directors and
Yes.
fantastic women directors,
Yes.
we've a lot more diversity. For instance, as an example, would you be fascinated to work with a Sofia Coppola as opposed to a Francis. You know,
I have a friend who's a director I worked with, of course.
Okay.
I have no problem. If it's again, if it's a person that I'm connected with creatively, it doesn't matter who they are.
Yeah,
whether
that's
they are
the best
black, white,
perspective.
woman, it doesn't matter.
That's the best perspective.
Yeah, you have to feel that you can work together in a
Has to be
creative
something.
way.
Yeah. before you
So
go forward.
my fellow writer-director Eric Sanchez is going to kill me if I don't ask you about Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh.
So can you talk a little bit about that experience? It's one of his pictures that he raves about all the time.
What
and
film is that?
Bram Stoker Dracula.
Dracula. Bram
Oh,
Stoker's
Dracula.
Well, I'm very proud of Dracula because I came in after they had a preview, blah blah, it didn't work, and I recut basically the entire movie on my own. Also, I had to share credit with two guys.
Sure.
One I never met, who takes credit for it, of course. And then the other one who was there but was relegated to, and didn't do visual effect and all that. So I really recut the whole picture, found a way to make the beginning work, and the only scene that I didn't recut was when she comes down in her wedding dress. That scene was absolutely perfect.
Okay.
So I think that I understood this movie because when Francis went to hire me, he asked me to read the book she had not read.
Okay.
And
Again, with source material.
I started to research, who he was, who his mother was. And his mother, Bram Stoker, his mother was a feminist, an Irish feminist, who was best friend with Oscar Wilde's mother.
Oh wow.
No.
And they were feminist. And I started to think of the Victorian age and what this novel was really about. It was not about monsters. The monster was sexuality.
Sure.
So once I was able to really figure out what the story was about for me, because that's what you need. You need to figure out for yourself. Another person might have it thinking of something else.
Sure.
But for me, that was my. I didn't discuss it with Francis. It's just.
You're
Wow.
into your
I
own
need to
intuition.
turn on like Jack used to say, you can think of a dog, don't tell them. You know what I mean?
Sure.
In other words, you don't have to reveal your process.
Okay.
You can keep it to yourself as long as it stimulates you to create the right thing.
Right.
So that's what I did. Once I had thought about all that, I knew what this movie was really about, and I was able to
Just go
do
for it.
a
It's a
good job.
beautiful picture, both shot and cut and directed. I think it's one of his underrated pictures. It gets
Well,
overshadowed.
we did well. I mean, it was a huge success.
Right.
Back in those years where
Sure.
people didn't make 10 billion.
Right, right, of
But,
course.
Lynzee, I wanted to ask. There's a film that I keep returning to, and I think it's a film to return to right now because of everything we've been through. But it's Outbreak. And that one, I mean, I think it's kind of cool because the first time I saw it, it was in high school, and it was kind of to describe the process of how they are, when there's a disease that goes out and spreads everywhere, like the panic that kind of goes on internally and how that spreads out and all that. It's a really interesting film. I mean, you were able to build so much tension in these little moments and have things pace out well enough where you're kind of on the edge of your seat, thinking what's going to happen, where's the virus going to go next to, and like how it's going to affect people. What was it like working on that film? Like, what was it like working with all these, I guess, interesting shots and stories?
It was really interesting. I didn't stay on the film very long because I had something else I had to go to. But let me tell you how that happened. That film was that was a Warner Brothers film,
Sure.
and it was directed by oh my goodness, he did Das Boot.
Das Boot,
It was a German director.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
great. A lovely man and very talented.
I'm sure we can.
Oh,
Yeah, now,
Clean that up for you, but
on
anyways.
the spot you can find out the name.
Yes, well, we will. I promise you.
Anyway, that's not even the point.
Yeah.
The point is here at the studios.
Yeah.
Right.
So they had optioned a book,
Okay.
and they had writers on it. And 20th Century Fox had also optioned a book on the same subject. Now this happened.
This is very common. This is very common in
Very
the studio
common,
system.
and they were racing. Each studio was racing. They had Jodie Foster and Robert Redford. Warner Brothers had Dustin Hoffman and other people, and Morgan Freeman,
Sure.
and a lot of good actors. But they didn't have scripts,
Yes.
and so to win, Warner Brothers started shooting. And what they shot, they sent a whole unit up to Rocha, California, with the military, with crowds, so it would be like the height of the end. A lot of people up there. And we would get dailies, which of course we'd go and see, and there'd be trucks going wide shot, right, left, left, right. And that would go on, then there'd be medium shots, same trucks, close up.
Yeah.
And everyone would be sound asleep. I thought, this would be a great cure for insomnia. They could make a fortune, because it's so boring, and it was MOS, no sound, really boring. And
does coverage for both of you? Does coverage help you? Because I'm the type of director that doesn't like cover. I'm more adventure. I like one-ers. I like continuous shots. But do you prefer
You haven't shot enough that to realize what a mistake it is to not cover.
No, I mean you need the coverage. Absolutely, you need it.
I
But
don't
as
direct it.
editors,
I don't care for too much coverage.
you don't care for too much
No,
coverage. So
because
there's the
I
contrast. That's
feel
what I
that
mean.
a director should have made his own mind on when the movie should be.
Right.
In Hollywood, there's such a pressure to cover everything
Of
to
course.
them.
Yeah.
And I prefer directors who have a clear mission when they start
Right.
and choose, a certain way of shooting a film.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you can do that, you're a director. As far as I'm concerned, the other guys are,
Yeah.
other people could do the job.
Yeah.
Because the cinematographers are so helpful, the
It
DPs.
just feels, and it's no offense on people who do that, directors that can do that. Just for me, it feels formulaic at times. So I try to, it depends on the picture, right? It depends on the picture.
But mistakes are
Well,
gonna
a
happen.
lot of
Mistakes are gonna
Somebody's gonna flub a line, and then you're gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah.
a lot of coverage doesn't necessarily mean formulaic.
Sure.
Because a lot of coverage can be very creative.
Yeah,
Exactly.
But you have to really know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
You
That is
really
true.
have to know.
Now, before we, because we know you ladies have been very kind with your time, but I do want to ask
I
you a
love
couple.
looking at you guys. It's
Oh.
wonderful. to
Yeah,
see.
you're adorable. What do we know? What do they have
You
here?
guys are inspiration.
You are the inspiration for us,
It's
but,
the best. It's the best.
I'm curious. You all have had this very beautiful transition that the world of cinema has gone through. That's very fascinating to me, which is the transition between celluloid emotion to
Exactly.
digital. You all have edited both in your careers, both digital and celluloid. What's that process like?
Yeah.
What's that transition like for you all? 'Cause it's fascinating to me just when that shift happened.
You know,
Were you stubborn or were you like?
Were you sticking to my celluloid, or did you not have a choice in that?
you know, for editing, digital is so fantastic.
Sure.
You can undo.
That's true.
You can, if we had a scene that was pretty good, but we knew we might want to make it better,
Right.
we'd have to send the film to the lab for a do,
For a do.
and send it to the sound place for a
You have to be much more selective with your editing and your splicing.
When I
No, it
first,
was more laborious.
Yeah.
Okay.
And by the time you got it back, you might have forgotten which, the
Yeah,
file
that's
was out.
Which
Or-
reel that might have been.
Okay, and then with digital, you can save every version. It's just no comparison.
Okay, so you definitely
However,
prefer. Okay.
it has negative.
well, I mean, when I was growing up in the business, the guys were like, moviolas are much, much better. You cannot create without a moviola. And I was thinking like, shit, I would never have been an editor if I had to do it on a moviola. That's the sound, the physicality of going back to the table, the director right there in your, so no.
Tiny screen,
So,
tiny screen.
so for me, that was like, so this idea that you hang on to technology is not my personality.
Oh, okay.
And so it's new, it's fine, let's do it. And like Lynzee said, I mean, when I first got my first picture for Francis, we would screen the cut and I was so nervous I would have too many splices. So I would go,
Bumps.
I swear I would in the screening
In the screening room.
because I was so embarrassed.
Sure.
Because the guys would get it like that. On the
It's-
first, Manuel, that it was like, they would get it on the first cut, and me, this little, I would have to go,
No, but it sounds like the editors adapted really well to it.
Oh,
More
yeah.
than directors, because they wanted to. But it's funny because we only ever learned digital to a certain
Right.
degree, right? Because that's what our film school, right? But I, as a director, want to shoot on celluloid. I want to revisit that
Why
for the
not?
picture,
Why
depending
not?
on the picture, right?
Why not?
And I plan to, but as long as there's a budget, right?
I mean,
because
right now-
we also know how expensive it can be.
Yeah,
We're also like in the best of both worlds because we're doing the nice part of like shooting on celluloid to get like that image and that color, you know,
The
especially like
grain,
you need
the
for. But then we scan it and then edit it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you can still
cut
do it.
digital.
Yeah,
But
you do it digital.
I remember I forget her name escapes me, but she edited Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh,
No,
and
and coats.
Yeah.
And Coates, and she speaks very highly of like, I learned it, just I learned the technology
No, it's
and
not hard.
you adapt to it.
No, I mean anything on a computer, you just have to know you push this button and that button and it does that.
And like
So-
you say, there's no deleting of the files
Right.
Oh,
necessarily.
it's so much better
So
for the
much
editing,
better.
but it was hard for me.
Okay.
Yeah, just because of
Because
the
I,
customization.
all the,
Sure.
Right.
but,
But that's a psychological thing, it's not.
Yeah.
It's a psychological.
Yeah,
So,
it's a fear, but
When it
honestly.
first started, was it something like more people were just saying, I'm going to shoot a film digitally and I want people to.
you
come
know what
edit"?
happened? It caught fire, the minute they
I
finally
would-
had it working on
Yeah.
Avid,
Yeah,
because there were many
because
bad
at first,
versions.
it was like
well, George
Within a
Lucas,
week, everybody had,
Lucas and the Pixar company started to kind of develop the first edit droids.
but
and
they
all
were,
That
Yeah,
was
but
horrible.
it wasn't
That
developed.
That was horrible.
That was
there were a
horrible.
lot of really bad versions,
Sure.
Yeah.
and no one could really work on it.
Yeah.
Oh, you're the microphone.
Oh, there were
No,
a lot.
I can hear you. No, so okay,
She gets
before
carried away, it's editing, what do you want?
sure. Before we get into
Let me move on. She did one of my favorites. The Ali. How was it editing Ali?
Well,
Will Smith.
great footage. This guy had so much great
Michael Mann,
footage.
right?
I was wondering if they make you watch some of the fights of Muhammad Ali so you could get kind of
Well,
see.
I did
You did anyways.
in real life.
In real time.
Because his fights were like,
The main
He
event.
was-
they were.
Before and after, it was a show still.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of boxing,
He
but
was an icon.
But you
Ali
watched it on the
Yeah.
inside,
and his courage as a person, what he did when he said he wasn't going to go into the
yeah. Right.
That was the biggest.
They
Just
just
That is
did a
wrong.
picture on that whole conversation. Regina King directed with
Yeah.
Sam Cooke, and they had that
Night in
conversation.
Miami or something.
One night in Miami, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic.
So-
Well, I cut a scene in Ali about that, so.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Since I didn't see the movie.
No, but that conversation you were fascinated by and that story.
Well, I lived during this time,
Sure,
I'm
so.
so
it was-
jealous.
Uh,
I'm so jealous.
Do you know you want to be jealous? I worked with Ali.
Oh, here we go.
You got it, girl.
Like
It
a
was-
commercial or.
I think it was called Freedom Award. I don't even remember because I don't know. I came in. I was not the editor. I was.
Was he still Cassius
a
Clay?
deluxe and I was in charge. They put me in charge of doing the looping with him.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and so very very naive, and I was a complete fan of him because back in France I had seen the first documentary. You know that first documentary where he came in with all his, fly like a
Yeah.
butterfly and all
Sting
that.
like a bee.
Product, I was in love immediately.
Right.
So, and boxing was not my thing either. Right? Everybody fell in love with him.
Yeah.
He was so charismatic, he was so smart, he was so fabulous. And so I'm in charge of looping this man. And of course at this time I'm a little bit quite ignorant of the idea, of how a black man from Louisville, Kentucky, might be sensitive about certain things.
Of course.
And so, in the middle of the thing, very naively and obviously not with any intent that he thought,
Of course.
I corrected him. And
Very prideful
that
man.
did not go well.
Very
Did not go
prideful
well.
man.
That did not go well.
But now.
But we made up, and he hugged me,
Oh.
everything was fine.
You're still
And we took a picture.
Oh, okay.
But honestly, that was the scariest moment I
It's
think.
because he had that present.
Huh?
What did you correct? What was the?
I forgot, he
Oh.
said something
Fumble
and I
over.
was correcting his acting. I was actually good at, something. Like you do when you're an editor, which I was
Sure.
not, but I was in charge.
We're just trying to help
For
out.
some reason I was doing that. I have no idea. I can't remember the detail of all that. But, I'll never forget his reaction.
Sure.
was so scary.
Now,
I wanted to be loved by him.
of course.
I didn't want him to hate me because I was a stupid French white lady who corrected the great man.
Right, of course.
And was he doing it kind of like playing around? Or
No.
Because he had that kind of sense
No,
of humor.
no, I knew him, I'd seen everything.
Woo! Woo!
No, this was personal.
You stood against Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Toe
I
to
stood,
toe.
I stood proudly saying nothing.
Now,
And I think he saw how terrified I was of his reaction because he came out of it, and that's when he came and we
See,
hugged
okay,
and all
so
that.
that's what meant to
His
Muhammad.
first reaction, I think, embarrassed him a little bit,
Yeah.
because he realized I was just a naive, well-meaning young woman who didn't know any better.
Eventually.
So, now, through your amazing career, I have two final questions for you. I know, I'd love to talk more to these jazz of walking cinema history in our presence, but if you had to name one inspiration, be it a past editor, a filmmaker, or even one of your peers that you came up with as a filmmaker, who would you name? One inspiration of you and your career?
Verna Fields,
Verna Fields.
who edited Jaws.
Oh,
And she was just a life force. She was a delight.
did you meet her?
Oh, yeah. We became friends.
Oh.
Yeah. And she was on the set of Jaws. And it was Steven's first big movie.
Right.
The blockbuster.
But she was such a force of life and so charming and just adorable person. And the studio was going nuts because the shark didn't work.
Right, yeah.
And they
Oh,
lost
yeah,
days and the weather and this. Every day was another challenge.
Yeah.
The weather.
Steven thought he was going to be fired from his
Well,
picture.
he would have
every
been
day.
fired except for Verna.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah, she was like Marcia. Everybody trusted her.
Yeah.
She was smart. She was adorable. She was charming, and she knew what she was doing.
Right. So
And she held that together.
and she gave you, I'm assuming, advice in certain instances? Or?
Her friendship and her warmth was so critical to me because also there were very few women
Right, yeah. That's right.
doing it.
I mean, maybe Marcia, Dama.
And once I was working on a film, and Dee Dee and Verna through the door, you can imagine.
Oh my.
And that was because they both had crushes on Milos.
Ah, so
They
there
were
it is.
working on hair in the same building as.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful. So how about you, Anne? Who's
I don't know. I can't say.
one?
I can't say there's one person or one movie.
Yeah.
So many different things
Absolutely.
that I have loved and admired, at different times too.
Yeah.
Well, then what's one of your favorite movies? What's one that you can just go back, sit back?
Francis always says, or
Hey, I think-
there's a director, I forget who he is, I think it's Robert Zemeckis. Bob Zemeckis says that every time he starts a picture, he has to watch The Godfather. So is that something for you, like if not a favorite person or somebody who inspired you, is there a film you have to go back to just to capture that?
I know it's kind of in the spot, but
I'll tell you the movie that changed everything for me about movies, Breathless.
Breathless.
Breathless. Because it was about people I would love to know and be around and what a world and the whole visual. It was just because we had movies then starring Troy Donahue. I mean, young people did not exist in Hollywood movies.
Ah, that is true.
The new wave was all about young people like
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Deciding to grab a camera and make movies. That's why it was so
Because
exciting.
we went from like the Carrey Grants and to these established to, for instance, Dennis Hopper, an Easy Rider, and
Well, those guys were all fans of the French wave. You have to
Right.
understand. The French wave was
It was huge.
was admiring of American movies and promoting some directors that
John
America did not
Godard.
like. But so it was a back and forth sort of thing. Because if you look at Breathless, you can see Bogart in the main character, the way Belmont is acting and doing this thing. And so it was, cross. But the French really, it was like a breath of fresh air. When these young guys came and decided we're going to do stories about ourselves. We are going to cut whatever we want. All the techniques that they all talk to the camera if we want to.
Breaking the fourth
It was
wall.
very, very creative. And I grew up on this
So just that.
So there's so much in my DNA.
Yeah. Okay.
That like that's really what I grew up with. With movies you've never seen, like the Goursaud. I don't know if you know this movie.
All those hidden gems.
Chabrol, the girl in the.
The Umbrella Report.
Yeah, I was not that much of a
That's one of my
fan of
favorite
David.
pictures. Yeah.
And one great filmmakers, I just want to give her. Agnes Varda.
Agnes Varda, yes, absolutely.
Agnes
Absolutely.
Varda really started the new wave.
Yes,
that?
sure,
She did
sure.
Point Course, which is the first new wave movie.
And she had much to prove. She was married
Which was not Demi.
to Jack Lee.
Which it's a documentary and a feature.
Yes,
You should
she
check
did
it
both.
Point Court. Yeah.
Agnes,
That's the thing that you could call new wave. And that was like in 1956.
Yes.
And,
The cinema verite.
yeah. Documentary, because all these guys, like I said that earlier, Godard said all great movies are documentary or something like that, and their movies were very much like documentaries. If you look, to live one life and you follow the prostitute,
Right.
she's doing that, Anna Karina, or Claude Sagasset, what a great film.
Cleo from
5 to 7.
5 to 7, yes.
Agnes
Great
Varda.
picture. Great
And
picture.
another great film always called Le Bonheur. Le Bonheur, if you ever get a chance to see that. What I like about her work is it's very nuanced. And that's
Sure.
rare in American movies.
Right.
And she digs into the kind of emotion that people might not want to talk about,
Right.
but that are existing at all times.
Exactly.
It's
Right?
the types of
And
films
that's
that
very much
inspire.
an acting thing, that all the great actors know this gray area of emotion.
You have to find that.
Yeah. You have to find those things that people are ashamed of, or normally with people that the convention, the bourgeois don't approve of.
Yeah, exactly.
The actors to break, the filmmakers, the actors has to break on that.
Right.
To find this thing that's not maybe approved by the church and
Right.
your parents'
Yeah.
club or whatever.
Yeah.
And that inspired our favorite filmmakers as well, because again, these guys know that all the audience knows that Martin Scorsese is my hero, and Taxi Driver wouldn't exist if Cleo from 5 to 7 was in a picture, or these French New Wave inspired films, not just French New Wave, but the Italian neorealism and the Polish pictures like Ashes and Diamonds that really inspired these filmmakers to do something different and not the Hollywood
Great
picture.
Polish cinema.
Yes,
Oh
Polish
my God.
cinema,
Oh my God.
Ashes and Diamonds. It's
I
just,
mean, people don't talk anymore too much about it right now, but the Polish cinema is incredible.
I'm preaching the gospel of all of that. I'm
Kislovsky.
making sure to keep it alive.
Kislovsky.
Kislovsky,
Have you ever
yes.
seen the Decalogue?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's
Sure.
masterful. It's something that he did for television, so it's all
Okay.
human stories, it's movies. You should definitely check.
I
So
will.
the
I promise.
Decalogue.
Okay.
Isn't that it's one masterpiece after another. The way
Wow.
he tells the story. It's truly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Ladies, we can talk cinema all
This is
day.
music
This
to my ears.
Yeah, but lastly, do you have any advice for filmmakers? Any advice that you'd like
And
to
real advice. You don't have to sugarcoat
Yeah,
it.
don't sugarcoat it for our audience.
Whatever you guys.
They need to know.
See
We need to know.
everything you can and keep an open mind.
You're open-minded. He's that guy.
Whatever you want to do in your life, be an actor, an editor, a director, do it. Because you're not if you don't do. So it doesn't matter. When I was starting, I thought, oh my God, I've never been the assistant to an editor. I'll never make it in Hollywood. I didn't care about Hollywood at the time. But I'll never be an editor. Oh my God. But you know what? I was lucky enough. I always cut because I'd been to film school and I knew
But you
guys
saw the
and
positions.
with me. So I would always practice my craft.
Sure.
So when my opportunity came, I was not afraid to cut.
You were
I was
right.
afraid of him, but you're not afraid. You know what I mean? So wherever it is that you can do your art, do it. It doesn't matter if nobody's looking at it at this moment. It doesn't matter if you're not like Scorsese. You're doing it, and then you practice because with talent you need skills, and you're not afraid. So when the opportunity comes, you can deliver, and you don't freeze,
Ready for
and
it.
you miss your opportunity.
Absolutely. And that's something none of us want
Yeah,
to.
we don't wanna
We want
miss
to
out.
seize the
So
opportunity.
Exactly.
just do your craft, whatever it is, find a way. I mean, today you're so lucky because you can do it with your iPhone.
Yeah.
You don't need to buy
There's no
expensive
excuse.
equipment. You know what I mean? In the old days, we had to have people with cameras and film stuck and the
Yeah,
whole
there's
bit.
no excuse for our generation.
No.
There really isn't.
Thank you so much
Yes.
for sitting with us.
You heard it here on the Towercast podcast. Advice for filmmakers: be open-minded and do it. Just do whatever your craft, whatever you love to do. We've had the amazing editors and Goursaud and Lynzee Klingman on the Towercast podcast here in San Antonio. Thank you, ladies, for your time, for being generous, for giving us advice, for telling us these gems of stories of cinema that we absolutely love.
Continuing to inspire all of us as artists. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Keep staying tuned on the Towercast podcast. We have more amazing guests here at the San Antonio Film Festival. We're going to interview a lot of indie filmmakers that are also seeking and giving advice. Thank you for tuning in. Keep watching cinema. Keep inspiring your fellow filmmakers. And thank you so much. Welcome back to the Towercast podcast, the towering podcast for the towering filmmaker of El Paso and the world. We are live at the San Antonio Film Festival. It's been an extraordinary day. Lots of filmmakers, lots of films, lots of networking, lots of interviews, as we had a couple earlier today. It's been fantastic. Right now we're sitting with a very exciting guest. We have the honor and privilege of talking to the executive director and founder of the San Antonio Film Festival. This is
Many hats. Many hats.
Wears a ton of hats. Mr. Adam Rocha.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. You've been
Exactly.
fantastic to us here at this event. It's our
You're
first
a
time
guest.
here at this festival.
You're total guest.
Yeah, we feel like
This
guests.
is your house too.
Oh, we appreciate
Appreciate it.
that. That's what it's about, connecting with filmmakers, right? Adam, before we talk about all of the stuff that's going on at the event today, can you tell us a little bit about your storytelling journey? How did you come into falling in love with cinema or the arts or all that?
That's a good question. I took a Super 8 class at
Super.
community college twice, just because so I can keep making movies and have a crew of people.
Sure.
This is 1990,
Okay.
and so what did we have in 1990 in San Antonio? That was it in our city, honestly. There
Super
was
8.
nothing else. Yeah,
That was it.
So I got a buzz out of that, and I had a great teacher, great junior college professor, and I just thought I could not afford to go to USC, UCLA Film School.
Was UT Austin still not like? Because that's relatively close. So was that
Yeah.
something in your sights?
I mean, it wasn't like like it is now.
Sure.
It wasn't in the zeitgeist. It was just like there.
Yeah.
So I mean, they make films in Hollywood.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and then I just thought, what's the next best thing?
Sure,
Let me get the
absolutely.
kids that go to these film schools, that pay the tuition, that pay the money to make the movies, get them to send me their film and pay me to do it.
Right. Sure.
So, but I did not know this was an arts administration job. It is. It's true. I mean, it's a love of labor. Like
Sure.
all of our crew are mostly volunteers. They're mostly retired teachers or teachers, and then or they're interns and they're high school kids or they're college kids or they're just interested in getting kicking the tires and wanting to learn about the industry. So, I mean, honestly, I didn't know anything about movie stuff other than like I grew up, loving movies.
That's awesome. So you went into kind of the administrative side of things, of course, with the film festival circuit. But was there a desire to make feature films or to make short films or to kind of go?
Yeah, that's a good question. I went to my journey through education was a 10-year journey. Like, I'm a slow learner.
I kind of relate to that. Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? I
It's
was
like
a kid that just didn't fit in. I'm still like that.
Sure,
Like
sure.
I'm telling you, slow reader. Out of class of 5,000, I was like 4,999.
Yeah.
I was a kid that would always cut up because I didn't understand how to do stuff. I was a kid that asked questions like, "What did the teacher just say?"
Just a different
So-
style of learning.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm a high school teacher now. I teach cinema production
Awesome.
for
In
like
high
19
school.
years.
Wow, that's awesome. I wish I had that in high school.
I know.
Exactly. So it's an extension of this, what we do here at the festival. But to answer your question, I went to San Antonio College for like maybe 4 years probably, and then I decided to go to UT, and for the reason of how to learn to write for movies.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you want to be a writer more than anything.
Well, I wanted to figure out the whole process of all the basics.
I have to ask, did you ever get the acting bug? Did you ever come out in one of your films? So you're a teacher, so you have
I'm a good goofball.
There we go.
You know what I mean? I
There
can
we
tell
go.
you jokes too. You're like peeing and crying.
We're gonna have to cast Adam. in one of
Yeah,
our
that's what I'm
pictures.
saying. I'm like, he's got a looker.
Dude, I cut up too much. I'm just the worst. And like 29 takes later, for my kids acting, for my high school students actors. I mean, as me as in front of the camera, I'm the worst. But sincerely, I'm just not really good. And then it's just like I'm not. That's not my lane.
Right. I have to ask.
Yeah.
It's just, you got the look. I'm an actor.
Thank
I
you.
kinda see it,
Sincerely, but so going to UT, I discovered, you know what, I'm better as a film festival producer, you know.
Maybe even like a film critic, film
Oh, I
reviewer.
do that for sure, yeah,
Oh.
absolutely. I mean, here in our town, like you guys have movie theaters and like
Sure.
there's critics in your town,
Sure,
and
yeah.
you know, they ask us, hey, can you do this? And like, I love doing that.
Yeah,
I do that
see,
anyway.
look, it shows. It shows that you love film and you
Yeah.
love incorporating that even in your personal life and becoming part of that. That's really awesome. And you have to have that bone in your body to do a film festival.
Yeah.
You just have to.
Yeah.
Right? It sounds like it. So, what year of the San Antonio Film Festival were we in?
27.
27th year, and how long have you been involved in?
I'm the founder.
So you've been for all 27.
Yeah, I started this at age 5.
Wow.
I'm joking.
I'm like,
These guys from El Paso, man.
let me get my calculator.
Yeah, that's
Just
not
joking.
calculating quite correctly.
I started at 18 or 19.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And now, is this directly coordinated? Because, for instance, in El Paso, we're very close friends and collaborators with our film commission, right? So they have a film
Yeah,
commission. Is this something in line with like a film commission in San Antonio, or is it kind of independent of its own thing?
No, we're a nonprofit organization, became established in 2008. We started the festival in 97.
And so
And so, you know, we had 2 different names before that, like the Underground Film Festival.
oh, okay, cool.
And so then, you know, we became legit. My wife's like, hey, stop effing around, you know, become serious or stop doing this, stop wasting our time. So, because she was going to school too at the time. And so I was like, okay, let's become a nonprofit, which is the bylaws and figuring out all those things.
The logistics to that way you could just be official.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and that's helped tremendously. And we just kind of, you just learn along the way.
Of course.
You know, I think when you start first baking cookies, you burn the first set or first couple
Sure,
of them. You know what I mean?
As filmmakers, we know that our first few films are not quite the best.
And you know what? Those are honestly the best kind.
How was in those first films?
Well,
How was in those?
Because when you watch them, it gets you so emotional because you're like cringing, like, oh, WTF, I made that? That's not mine. I'm so embarrassed to scream that in front of everybody
If
else.
we love it from our
This
own
guy
like,
knows.
favorite filmmakers, why shouldn't we love it from our
There's
own work?
something about watching those kind of films that you connect on a much deeper level than it feels like a great film. It's like, I know being there and you're trying to get the shot because the cops are going to come in 5 minutes and kick you out. Like, I mean,
Or you can see behind the lens. You can see what's
Oh.
actually happening.
Oh,
By the
exactly.
actor
Oh,
looking
yeah.
over in that direction, you're like, oh, what's gonna happen? What's happening
Every
there?
time.
we've had this, the films where like the crew's in the shot and then it's like, well, that's the only take we got.
That's the only thing we got in the thing, so let's scrap
I
it.
guess it's a cameo.
Yeah.
It's a cameo.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. So, this is our first time coming to the San Antonio Film Festival, and we've had a blast, but
Beautiful.
you had tremendous guests today that we got to interview. A couple of them are fantastic industry leaders.
Oh, man.
Powerhouses in their
Editors.
own right with the editing field. What are some cool moments that you've had in the past few festivals? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
What are some cool moments that you've experienced with the San Antonio
The,
Film Festival?
the craziest was because our 3rd year we had, first of all, it was we put the call for entries out. We had 13 entries, and that was all on VHS.
Oh, okay.
So we played all the films, and then my buddies were like in the bands, right? That was a big thing in the 90s,
Yeah.
right? So I bought 10 kegs of beer, and we had like 10 bands, and you paid $5, you can drink and drown,
Nice.
and then watch movies.
Nice.
You know, so it was like great. I'm older and more mature now, but it was like, you know, you're 19, you're stupid, and you're supposed to be.
But it's
I didn't remember those times.
It's kind of fuzzy.
Should.
of course.
Like the 2nd year we had our show, we had a young kid, his name's Todd Phillips.
Oh, come
And
on.
he had a short documentary about Gigi Allen. We screened it. And so, you know, and we're like, okay, cool. And I'm telling you, I don't really remember those fuzzy came back 3 years later with the feature. It was about what is it, the frat boys, and it was like Man Bites Dog in the sense that you think it's a documentary, but it's not. So it was really, really progressive and like scary, and HBO Pictures bought it, and they never played it because it was like really super edgy at that time.
Right.
And so, but my point is come here, go far.
Todd Phillips went on to be Todd Phillips.
He did the the Las Vegas movie,
The
Joker,
Hangover, Joker. He's getting into a lot of serious territory.
So I'm gonna see if he'll come back next year. And I didn't realize this until like in 2019. One of our filmmaker buddies who started out here, and he ended up moving to Hollywood, editing for whatever studio. And he's like, "Hey, did you remember when we were young and Todd Phillips came out?" I was like, "Orale." Okay. And so I've been name dropping.
Yeah, no, trust me. Don't shy away from that on this podcast.
Exactly.
Listeners not like that, but that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of Texas filmmakers. To name a few, I mean, you have the Richard Linklaters, the Robert Rodriguez's that love staying in Texas and love going to Texas events. I'm sure you've had encounters with those types of filmmakers out here and wanting to contribute something to the San Antonio film kind of community.
Well, we've reached out to those guys, but it's Austin and we're San Antonio, so I don't know.
It's because Austin has a very niche film community.
I guess we're too small for them. I don't know.
And
I'm okay with that. Like honestly,
Paso, we feel you. It's like
we're still mom and pop, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Like,
It's obviously been grand, and there's a lot of things happening, but it also feels like a close knit kind of community.
It is.
We're just watching these
Like,
films together. Yeah.
Honestly, the energy here and just like seeing people excited and still wanting to come out, and I mean, you guys have had to deal with like COVID and all that, where things were shutting down, and you're wondering like, is the community gonna be able to like come back? And I mean, they're still coming back. They're still wanting to participate. I feel like that's just wonderful.
I gotta ask, what's your type of vibe of films? What was yours growing up, and then what did you
Oh, I
test?
love mobster gangster films, man.
Marty?
I mean, yeah, of course.
Of course, Marty.
I mean,
of course. Who was your, if you had one, who was your main one that, oh man, I want to get those shots, I want to
I mean, when I was a kid, I was like in 1991, I think Goodfellas came out. I saw it like at the Dollar Movie, where somebody had been shot and they were closing it down. And I saw it like, I swear, like 12 freaking times. It was like Tuesday on 75-cent day or whatever. I was like, oh my God.
This is just perfect.
This is Nirvana,
There is
freaking
God.
out, it's geeking out.
Is that something you used to appreciate? Like, if mob films come out and then, more modern times?
Well, then I have to ask.
The classics?
Yeah, I have to ask, if you like Goodfellas, what do you think of The Irishman?
That was pretty cool. I mean, it's, here's the thing with, I think, in my humble opinion, I mean, I'm not a filmmaker. I wish I was.
Right.
But I think when you're a kid, when you're young, when you got Mean Streets in you, you got a story to tell, you have to let it out.
Right.
I think what happens is that you're just hungry. Like, you just saw behind the camera like 5 college students pass. They eat fucking ramen noodle soup every fucking day, right? I mean, that's what I did as a kid.
Yeah.
And now, I'm eating lobster bisque and all this other shit. So I'm used to this certain level.
Right.
My point is, when you're hungry, when you're young, you don't know what the ceiling is. You don't know with the pain, or you're like, oh my God, I want to end it off, Jesus. I'm going to join the Air Force. That was my thing, I swear. I mean, nothing wrong with the Air Force, but I was like, I'm going to do this. I hate this shit. I'm so fucking poor. I'm sorry, I cussed a lot.
You're
I'm so fucking poor. You know what I mean? I was like, fuck that shit. I'm going to fucking keep going on
Doing what you
and
love.
doing more.
Doing what you love overall.
Yeah, yeah.
If you love staying in the arts and cinema, you got a job in the arts and cinema.
Yeah.
You're a proven example of that. So
But it's tough. I mean, it's tough.
it is.
And so to answer your question, but those filmmakers, when they're young, they're fucking hungry and they're fucking fighting, and they don't know the roof. So I think, what you asked about, what you think of The Irishman, I think it's a badass film for who he is.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, my grandfather passed at 72. I don't know how old Scorsese is. He must be in his late 70s. My point is that, I mean, I could go to the park downtown and talk to 78-year-olds that, don't have it registered in their head.
Very true.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think you have to look at it for what it is. Like, when you study cinema, from the fucking 30s or 40s, and it's like you have to put yourself in the mindset of that time. They didn't have the fucking internet.
Right.
They didn't have Google.
True.
They didn't even have fucking outhouses and shit. You know what I mean? So like, you know, if you're like, I'm a film critic and I don't accept that, then you're a fucking dumbass because you're not looking at the whole picture. You have to understand what the old Hollywood is, and you have to respect
Absolutely.
that.
You have to respect the people that came before you. And I say this all the time as a filmmaker, if you're not a student of cinema and you're not honoring the giants whose shoulders we stand on, then you're not doing it correctly. You're not honoring the art, the craft, the history behind it. I think it's only fair to do so.
And I think international cinema too, you know, F
Absolutely.
American filmmakers.
Yeah.
Like, go watch.
We're too full of ourselves, man.
I mean, there's a ton of like Arab filmmakers out there that nobody knows about because there's this wall of like hate or like I'm afraid to know.
And you're a fan of Scorsese, so you must know that he has this whole Criterion series on Martin Scorsese's World of Cinema, where he studies these guys and gives them some publicity to get these films out because they deserve.
It's breaking
it.
through the noise.
Yeah.
That's honestly what it's doing.
Absolutely.
When it's putting down our stereotypes of like, oh, these people are this way. No, motherfucker, they're the same. They're fucking people. They have two hands.
Yeah.
They breathe.
Yeah.
It's not hating.
It's the human condition.
No, that's why I love fucking movies, is because it puts it in your face. Like, okay, you know, to me, when you go back to the 90s or the 80s, when I grew up, I didn't see anybody like that looked like me on TV.
Absolutely.
I was like, F
We're
that.
still fighting.
I don't know how it feels like. I just know this one-sided story. So I was like, you know, that's why I still teach cinema. That's why I'm here. I think I was put on earth to be like, okay, I'm going to help springboard these other people's.
That's so
and help
amazing.
give them a springboard or figure out, okay, this is your message. Everybody's got a message.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing that you're giving people voices, especially us Mexican American filmmakers who don't really have internet today. Sure, it's getting better, but we're barely breaking through the zeitgeist on a bigger scale, and we should be giving people the voices. And what better to give filmmakers voice than a film festival? I think that's honorable, and you yourself said you found your purpose. How great is that? You know. Do you have any advice for filmmakers, creatives who, not just in Texas, but everywhere in the world? I mean, we literally have viewers from Argentina and Brazil and all these places. So, do you have any advice for filmmakers who want to have a voice and submit their films to a film festival, but maybe they're too afraid? Maybe they're too.
Okay, stop being a number two.
Okay, I didn't want the generic one. I wanted
We wanted the random answer.
Okay, become an accountant, motherfucker. Okay, because this shit don't pay for nothing.
Yeah.
I'm the worst. No.
I
Like,
love it.
sincerely, you know, I like to surround myself around smarter people than me. And then I like to stay away from poisonous people.
Sure.
I mean, everybody has it. It's your family or your
It's
your
so
friends
good,
that you grew up with, and you can be like, okay, cool, and then just, you know, ice them out or whatever.
Yeah.
But and then you have this your own self that's self-hate. This is like this little id, and you just got to learn to shut that off. And like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm gonna do what the fuck I want to do, and I'm gonna do it right fucking now when the fuck I say I want to do it.
Right.
And then here's the thing. I never got in a fight where I went in second fucking place. You know? So fucking start swinging, stop being a and start doing it.
Hey, sometimes we need to hear that. No, not sometimes. All
It's
the time
true.
we need to hear that.
Look, I'm telling you, I've been kicked out of lots of university. I've been teaching for years. I also teach at community college. But I tell the kids, look, you got 16 seat dates from fucking script to screen, and I don't give a shit if they fire me because I already got a career.
Right.
So,
Keeping it real.
but the opposite end of that, the reason I say that, and I say that with love, because, you know, I went to community college and I didn't have like, you know, stuff to take with me and say, look, this is my work, bro. This is what I did. This is what I built. This is what I made. So I try to help those kids cut through all the, like seriously, all the noise and say, look, okay, you say you want to be a filmmaker because that's what you told me, Carlos, when you walked in the door. I'm using your own words for you, man. So be on fire about it. Don't say I'm gonna plan. Nobody gives a shit about you plan to do. I plan on no.
What are you
Just talk
doing?
about what you just did.
And it's great because it's, you know, filmmakers, creatives all around, musicians, everybody, we get so much slack from the societal norm of you shouldn't be doing that. You need a career, you need health insurance, you need this. this.
I mean, that's-
and we get so much
Right.
slack already, and for somebody like you that's a professor and a creative to come and say, hey, you're either going to take this seriously or you're not.
No, you need to fire, because if you don't have any drive to like do that in places
It's not
like
for the- it's
San
not for
Antonio
the-
and El Paso, where we really don't have the huge backing. We're
Yeah,
trying to
we
go
don't.
from there not being anything to growing something and
We're-
making something big.
Look, here's how kids learn. They see other kids do it, or they see other people how they behave, and they copy that. They mimic that.
Sure.
So how do you do that in your own town, in your own clique? What you ask that question of, wherever it is in Argentina?
Right.
Well, just watch 1,000 DVDs, but go support local films. Go watch a filmmaker that screens at the little poetry house,
Right.
and go ask him questions and say, well, let me help you out, bro. I don't know what I'm doing. That's what I say all the time, and it gets me through. I just jump in the deep end of the pool head first and figure out how to swim later. I mean, the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to be dead. And we're built.
That's the heritage,
We're
right?
built.
That's the Mexican American bones. It's like we got thrown into the pool. We weren't taught how to swim.
Yeah.
So.
And stop hating. Stop self-hating.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. Stop the fucking self-hating, man. And then just be like, okay, this is who I am. South by Southwest is who they are. That's cool. I
Yeah.
support that. I go to it. I appreciate it. But we're
There's
San
enough-
Antonio Film Festival. This is who we are.
There's
man.
enough room here for everybody. There's enough room.
It's just, you gotta realize who you are and just be okay with that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's awesome.
I mean,
Awesome.
honestly, we've been able to survive and come down here and do what we do and continue to do that because luckily we found our community. And I think when you don't have it, it's really hard and it's just kind of like you got to get out
It's
there and
hard.
go do it. But then places like this, it's wonderful when you can meet people and start finding that little like pocket of people that just will support you, and then you can do nothing but grow. From
I
there.
love listening to old people talk about how fucking hard it is to write.
We
Because
had it easy,
like we had a talk yesterday with the two professors, one from UT Austin, one from UT Arlington,
Oh,
and they're talking about the writing process, and it is like the hardest freaking thing. It's a journey, like you asked at the very beginning. Like, it is so hard to do. It's the hardest thing to do is to come up with your own story and like not hate it so much. And then the funnest part is to be in production.
Absolutely.
And the second one is editing. But the worst thing is writing, son of a bitch. It's fucking hard.
We talked to Doug Ellen not too long ago on the podcast, and he told us how he's kind of he'll admit it, he's like, I'm the most self-deprecating person to myself. He's like, because he's been on Emmy nominated, he's written tons of scripts for TV and film, and it's a grueling process for him to sit and write a new story. And every writer goes through that at one point or another, but then you start, my motto's always been, tell the stories you fall in love with. So when you fall in love with an idea and it just won't leave you alone, and you have to put it down on paper, and then you have to develop it, if you don't love it enough, it's gonna kill you. But if you love it enough to say, you know what, no, I'm gonna see this through to the end, then you're championing your own work, I think. And it's a very special for me, a very special process for me to see it through the end. And sometimes it's gonna suck, but at least you saw it through to the end. And then the next story might feel better, and the next story might feel better. That's been my experience.
Dude, I'll tell you, like, the fun part is the failure of anything for me, because that's where you learn.
Yeah.
It's the learning process. And like, you just said something that hurt me in my head back, and it brought me back to like when I made two films together. I applied to AFI grad school when I was turning 40. Okay, and so I was like, let me start looking at, and this is like in October, and it said, okay, the deadline is like Thanksgiving or whatever, December 1st or whatever.
Right.
So I was like, okay, and then it said, make a movie, and I didn't read, it said, make two fucking movies. So I was like, shit, man, I need to make two fucking movies.
Yeah.
And so I made one on Monday, the second one on Tuesday, the first one on Wednesday, and I had to go, and it was like, these are fucking dog shit movies. What the fuck is this? What did I do? And I was I had the fucking resume, I had the cover letter, I had everything like that. But the movie sucked ass. I was like, oh my god, I didn't even want to screen them to the actors in the film. I was sweating, I was perspiring, but it was like, you know what, son of a bitch, just go back and fucking reel in that and learn from it and then swim in that and just figure it out.
You did it. I think the important lesson is to learn from that, as most people don't.
And I was so depressed that Christmas time, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna fucking do like the Super Bowl commercial, even though it was already passed.
Yeah.
I was like, I need a redemption, man.
Yeah.
and I like put my heart and soul to it. I paid attention. And I learned from it. I was like, yeah, bitches, drop the mic. And I was very happy with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I left it at that. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna come back to that when I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's consuming so much cinema and so much learning from others and other sets and other filmmakers, and once you absorb enough, it's like, okay, I'm ready.
You know what's weird? I remember that we went through a similar experience with with the lockdown and everything that was going on. We were kind of having to roll with like, oh, we got these bigger projects, they're planned out, we're ready to get production started, and then everything shuts down. And then we're like, okay, we're just gonna wait a little while. But then that long period of waiting, I know with me, it was just kind of like, am I gonna be good when I go back? Is everything gonna come out right? And then you're doubting yourself, and you're in this little like weird headspace pocket where it's like we just had to kind of go out and film something so we could remind ourselves like, no,
we're good.
I'm filming, I'm good.
Yeah,
I can be out there and keep doing what I'm doing because you get into those pockets, you get into those bad headspaces, and you need something to break you out of it.
Absolutely. I think the advice that Adam is giving us is absolutely terrific for you guys, filmmakers and creatives alike. Even if you're not a filmmaker, you can apply this to a ton of things.
Stop being a bitch and do it.
Surround yourself with a great community. Go out and just fucking do it.
Exactly.
And be a student of it all. I think those are the three big pickups I got from somebody like
You just
Adam.
said, man, hang out with people smarter than you. That's how you learn.
Absolutely, man. I'm surrounded by very
You
smart
guys,
people.
man. I learn every day.
This has been a very awesome episode of the Towercast podcast. We've had the amazing executive director and founder of the San Antonio Film Festival, Adam Rocha. He's been amazing to us, and if he'll allow us, we'll be back next year to talk some
Come back
more.
every year.
Yeah,
We'll bring some of our films next time. We'll submit some films and get some
Hopefully.
of ours in there.
Dude, we used to be super rowdy, man.
Yeah.
Like when we had warehouse parties and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But now we're not profits, so it's like,
Understandable.
No, man, but it would be fun. If you invite us again, we'll absolutely come
Come back.
next year and let's do it again. But thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for hosting us here. We love San Antonio. We love what you guys are doing here, and we're definitely going to be spreading the word. We hope we've also spread the word of Tower Productions out of here.
Yeah,
Everybody out there, get over here.
Yeah.
San Antonio Film
Come check out the San
Festival.
Antonio Film Festival, SA Film, and make sure to check them out on all their social media, on their website, and check it out. There's some awesome stuff happening right here, and this very niche market of filmmakers are the people we consider family in our film community. So check them out. Check out their
support
films.
other filmmakers too, man. That's so important as well.
So important. Absolutely. You heard it here first on the Towercast podcast. We'll see you next time. Stay tuned for more. Thank
Take
you.
care, guys.